Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Chris with InsideTheU. I have 10 takeaways and tidbits following today's 13th spring practice, and this is based on the media availabilities with players Charleston Rambo, Avantae Williams, Wiggins, and Avery Huff. We were able to ask some questions, and that's where my number one takeaway starts. Cameron Harris, as everybody saw, had the huge play in the scrimmage with the hurdle over Gervin Hall for the touchdown. Very impressive play, the most impressive play of the spring that we've seen. So I asked Wiggins about that play, but also what is it about Cameron Harris this spring that has stood out to him? So in terms of that play, D said he's not surprised, but basically said that Cam actually told him right before the play that he was going to hurdle someone, and sure enough, that's exactly what he did. And D is not surprised on the performance that Cam's had. Feels like he's a guy that's always been that guy ever since they came in, since they've been on the team together. So Cam's done a good job. He's been known as a hard worker, and that's continuing to display this spring. Also, just a guy that continues to make plays and get better. So those are good signs for Cameron Harris. Certainly, he's in that tight battle to be the lead back for the Hurricanes this season, along with Don Chaney Jr. and Jalen Knighton. But certainly, it sounds like that Cam's having a good spring. So that's good to hear for his standpoint. Okay, number two, let's stick with Wiggins. So he had 2 touchdowns in the spring scrimmage. Coming off of it, it's great to see for him. He's a guy that's coming off a season where he played a lot, but also dealt with some drops. And one of the questions he was asked was, are there certain things that he's either working on to be a better receiver? And also, are there things he's doing to maybe eliminate some of those drops? In terms of the drops, he said, look, it's just about focusing more. And in terms of his game, he said he's focused on everything. He feels like he wants to be a better receiver all the way around. He's actually watching film on 2 NFL receivers quite a bit to maybe help with his improvement, and that's Amari Cooper and also Davante Adams. 2 guys he likes how they run routes, just either whether it's getting downfield or on slant routes, whatever it might be. He likes watching those 2 guys, and that's a good sign. So good to hear that D's continuing to improve, and I'll have more on D later. Number 3, Avery Huff. What strikes me about Avery Huff, talking today, he certainly feels confident that he knows the playbook, knows where to be, and he feels really good about his performances this spring. We've heard that he's been productive in the spring scrimmages, the 2 that they've had so far. Their third one and final one will be at the spring game. But what Avery's doing, and I asked him specifically if there were a couple plays that maybe stand out to him that he did in those scrimmages. And his first one that came to mind was in this last scrimmage, he said he plugged the A-gap really well, made a tackle for loss, felt really good about that play. He actually beat the ball carrier to the point of attack before the offensive lineman was able to pull on a play. So that was a good sign. He really liked that he was able to make that play. And then also what stood out to me too was he mentioned another play where he felt like basically he was supposed to guard the tight end, gave up a 5-yard pass, but he kind of bit a little bit on the quarterback, but he mentioned that play like it was one of those plays he felt like he could work on and just a challenging play. So it wasn't just a tackle for loss. He felt good about that play as well, one that stood out to him in his development. Another thing with Avery Huff, he's trying to get to 220 pounds. Right now he's 211. He said it's fluctuated up to 215. It's gone up and down since then, but 220 is the goal for him. So Avery Huff playing with a lot of confidence right now. I think he's a player to watch for in the spring game. I think he has a chance to have a good one if all of the things have been true, that he's making these progress, all these steps. So that's a good sign. And look for Avery to really try to land that weak side linebacker spot. He's been getting some reps there in the first team as well as the second team. Okay, my number 4 takeaway is someone we've talked about quite a bit in the spring, and that's safety Avantae Williams. Avantae talked to the media for the first time since he's been at Miami. After last year, didn't play. He wouldn't address the actual reason why he was held out. We've heard before that it had to do with a neck injury, but he didn't want to comment on that. He also didn't want to get into specifics about the quarterbacks he was facing. But Avantae, a couple things that stood out to me with what he was saying was he's been splitting time between free safety and strong safety, kind of rotating at both spots. And I think that's good to hear that they're just trying to get him maybe figure out exactly where he plays the best. But he's making plays at both. He had that interception in the first scrimmage, so he's doing well. And then also we're hearing that he's doing well in making tackles. So those are good signs for Avantae. Number 5, Charleston Rambo. Now, Charleston mentioned that he had the 7 catches in the last scrimmage, But what stood out to me was he noted that the 7 catches actually came on 7 targets. Certainly a great sign that he's catching the balls thrown his way. And as you guys know, not every pass is going to be perfect or right to his hand. So the fact that he's been able to make some catches, maybe that weren't perfect to him, that's a good sign. The 7 for 7 is great to see. The 107 yards and the touchdown, obviously good as well. And he was talking about, just fitting into the offense. Feels like he's made some adjustments, coming on from Oklahoma. Feels confident that things are working out well for him as he, once again, makes that adjustment to a new offense, producing. He's another one that I'm very curious to see how he does in the spring game based on how we've been hearing he's been doing in the spring. You're going to get a first look at him, and the big thing that with Charleston, if you're going to be able to see that speed really on display, because that's his best attribute, that's what you're hoping to see in the spring game. Number 6, I was able to ask Charleston what it's like going against Tyreek Stevenson in practice. He actually mentioned DJ Ivy in the same response. And basically he wanted to lump them both together, but both of them, he said that they've got good length and both are strong cornerbacks to go against. Certainly that's a challenge for a guy like Charleston, who's not the biggest receiver, but he just really liked the battles that he has with both guys, the competitiveness that he's seeing in practices, and certainly he feels like going against both of those guys is making him a better player. So good to hear. And also those two guys will be looking to make big plays, avoid the big catches on them in the spring game. So those two are obviously looking to finish strong in the spring. Number 7, it's going back to Avantae Williams. He was asked about Ed Reed. As you guys know, the chief of staff, Ed Reed, has been around practices at times and the players. And he was asked about what's the biggest message or the biggest learning point that he's gotten from Ed. And the biggest thing that he said was, Avantae just said, Ed's really preaching to them about how to learn the defense. Really wants guys to be able to play fast. And the biggest thing with that, and this is just a quick tidbit, but the biggest thing with learning the defense and playing fast is taking notes. So I think that's great that the players are hearing that from someone like Reed, and I think that could certainly help them with their development. Speaking of development, number 8, the young wide receivers. A lot of attention is on the wide receivers, the young guys, whether those first or second year receivers, as they make make a push. And D. Wiggins was asked about how they're doing, their improvement. He feels like there were 2 things that D said that stood out to me. Number 1, yes, these guys are on their tails, the guys that have played more. He feels like also that these guys came into UM and they've just been really hard workers. And that's exactly what we've heard from Coach Likens. So it's great to see that other players are noticing it as well. So certainly D understands that he's got to be better and play well and make sure that he's doing all the right things to make sure that these guys don't pass him on the depth chart. Number 9, another competition to watch for is at safety. Now, Avantae Williams is doing everything he can to make that impact. He also said that he has some goals for the season and he just wants to fit in. He said he's willing to play special teams and anything he can do to help the team. But in terms of the competition at safety, he really likes that all these guys came back. He's really learning from them, whether it's Bubba Bolden, Amari Carter, or Gervin Hall. He's learning from those guys. And then also noted when James Williams gets on campus, a young guy, 5-star recruit, that when he gets on campus, everybody's going to do what they can to help him with his development, just to have a really good safety room. So competition is definitely tight there. A lot of guys that Miami could go with. And like I said, Avantae's doing everything he can to put his name in that mix. And also there's other young guys that we've not talked about that much that are also looking to compete and be in that mix as well. My 10th and final takeaway and tidbit following today's practice is a short one. And it's just the fact that Avery Huff, going back to his confidence, not just in himself, but in the team. And he's saying that the team's looking scary. It's just a quick tidbit that he's feeling confident about what he's seeing in practices, feels good about the team. So just wanted to pass that on as well. So like I said, spring game coming up in practice number 15. They've got another one before that. For all your coverage of the Miami Hurricanes, check out InsideTheU.com. You can follow me on Twitter at InsideTheU. Thanks again for watching and take care.